Hello and welcome to another edition of The Focus Show. Today, I'm your host, Cameron Kia, and today we have our very special guest, Mr. Mahan.
Mahan. Yeah.
And as we know, this guy, personally, is probably one of our coolest guests, and we're going to ask him a couple questions about his job. And as a starting question, what do you do, basically?
I'm a voice actor.
Voice actor.
Yeah. So that can be anything from doing the voice for a commercial to animation or video games, almost anything. I've even voiced some exhibits at the Fort Eustis Museum. So
that's cool. And I just wanted to ask, do you make the voices on a computer or voice them personally?
Well, I voice them myself, and I record it on my computer. Sometimes I will go into somebody's studio and they'll record it there. But a lot of times I can record it, from my studio at home on my computer, and I'll be connected to somebody else's studio.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And just as a question, because some people, they get inspired to do their job. So what inspired you to be a voice actor or to just create voices for characters?
Well, it's something I always wanted to do. Like when I was a kid, I watched a lot of Bugs Bunny cartoons.
Yeah.
That was the kind of the big thing when I was a kid. Yeah. And I always loved, back then there was one guy who did almost all the voices.
Pretty much.
Yeah, so I always enjoyed doing that, and I was going through school, and when I was in the Army, I was always somebody who could do the voices of somebody. So that's kind of something I always did for fun or to make people laugh. And then eventually, just a few years ago, I got into it as an actual line of work.
That's cool. And did you receive any special training for it? Or did you take classes to improve your skills, if you did?
Yeah, the first thing I did was I went to an actual voiceover conference. And that was up in Northern Virginia, like a whole weekend of classes to learn how to do voice acting and all sorts of all the different genres, and even the business side of it too, because that's pretty important. Aside from that, I've also taken classes online or usually one-on-one where you do some coaching. So if you were to start on your own, I would say definitely take some acting classes, because I didn't have that going into it, so that's something I had to do to catch up.
And on the part of acting, do you know how you match your character's voice and personality and their emotions? Do you know how you
Yeah, a lot of times, if you have a script, you'll have some clues in there, you can see what's going on, or sometimes they'll have little directions in there. Sometimes when I audition for a role, they'll have a picture of the character. And you can kind of tell, if it's like a mean character or just like a goofy little bouncy character. You can kind of look at that and see what the lines look like, and then kind of draw your conclusions from that and make up your character as you go.
Make your voice to how they look. How you see some certain characters and you kind of expect them to say or be a certain way.
Right.
You see a big scary guy, he's probably gonna have a deep voice. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Kind of like that. And how did you actually get started into voice acting? Just as a
Well, my wife is a teacher, and one of the things she does in one of her classes is she uses an audiobook. So the kids will read in class and they'll listen to an audiobook as they're doing it. And at one point she came up to me and said, "Listen to this chapter." And there was I'm not going to name who it is, but there was a pretty big actor who had voiced this one audiobook. And I listened to it, and it's really bad. And she said, "You could do better than this." And she eventually, my wife was very, once she gets an idea in her head, she doesn't let go of it. And thank God for that, because she actually found that conference up in Northern Virginia that I went to, back in 2018. That's when I really got my start. That was her idea, and she kind of launched it, and this is where we are.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Really cool. We'll actually be right back after the commercial break. Welcome back to the Focus Show. I'm your host, Cameron Kia, and we will resume our questions with Mr. Mahan. And do you prefer working on cartoons or video games or audiobooks, and why?
I've done some audiobooks, and they're fun to do, but it's a lot of work. The last audiobook I did was about, total recorded time was about 7 hours or 8 hours, which is a lot of time in the booth. And especially if you make mistakes, you have to fix them. And it was a great process. But really, my dream job would be to be like have a recurring character on an animated series, or do a video game. That's the next thing that I really want to do.
Yeah. And on that topic, what is the hardest part about voice acting? If you had to say, like, just the hardest part.
Actually, the hardest part is really the business side, because you have to get at least a couple of agents that send you auditions to do, and then but a lot of the work that I've gotten has just been through making contacts with people, like the one that I mentioned up at Fort Eustis. It's because I had done something for the lady who runs the museum up there. And I made a contact with her. Same thing with, I've done voices for a local company called the Rainbow Puppet Productions. That's because I knew the man, Mr. David Messick, who runs those. That's kind of the hard part, because getting traction and getting the work is sort of the hardest thing. Once you're in there doing it, it's just fun.
Yeah. And how many takes does it usually take to just get one scene right? Just like one scene.
Well, it depends. I mean, when I'm doing an audition, which is where I'm trying to get the job. It's sort of like interviewing for the job, basically. Yeah. But I send an audition, and usually you do maybe 2 or 3 takes with different variations on what they want to hear. But when I'm actually recording for somebody, sometimes you can get it right away. Other times they'll kind of tweak it as they go, but usually at the most 2 or 3 takes.
Not bad. And what has been your favorite character to voice act?
It wasn't a big job, but probably my favorite one was for Rainbow Puppets. There was one play they did where they had a little gopher that sounded exactly like Clint Eastwood.
You know what? I think I know what you're talking about, but I don't remember. I think I saw it when I was a kid.
Well, it was only a few years ago, I think.
A few years? Okay.
It was a little play called Stone Soup. It was this little gopher that had like a cowboy wide brim hat and a little poncho, and I had to make him sound like Clint Eastwood. So that's what I did.
That's actually cool. And I just wanted to ask, what advice would you give to someone if they wanted to become a voice actor?
I would say start with acting classes, because I didn't have that to begin with, so I had to sort of play catch up with that. Even if you're only going to be doing something like commercials or narration, that's still acting, because you still have to, sort of guide what you're doing about what you're trying to do for your audience, who you're trying to be.
Yeah, and just as a personal question, have you ever done a really popular voice acting, or like one that's really known?
Not yet. I've only been doing it a few years, but I've worked with a couple of people that were pretty famous. There's a guy named Michael Scott, who's a voice actor in a bunch of video games.
Yeah, I think I know who that is.
Yeah, because he was at the last conference that I was at, he's done a ton of video game work. So I've actually started coaching with him to try and get into video game and animation.
Any specific video game or show you would love to be in? Just if you had to really be in one? You know, if you had to be in one.
I mean, because I used to do so many when my sons were younger. I mean, they're adults now,
Yeah.
but when they were younger and SpongeBob was on, I used to love doing SpongeBob stuff. So I would love to be a recurring character on like either SpongeBob or something like that.
Oh, that's
Even a background guy, Larry the Lobster, something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. To be honest with you, I've watched SpongeBob before, and some of those fish were really mean. You know, if you really look back on it, they were
Yes.
really mean.
Yeah.
Like, seriously mean.
Yeah.
But that's all I have for you. So thank you for being on the Focus Show. And
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. And your job is really cool. Honestly, it's really cool.
Thanks. I enjoy doing it. It's a lot of fun.
And that is all for the Focus Show. And we will see you guys later on our next one.